Welcome back to Psychology 2. This is part 2 of Biology and Psychology. In this video, we will review the endocrine system and the role of evolution and heredity on our brain development. So we're going to get started right away. The endocrine system is made up of glands with and without ducts, not the quack quack ducts, D-U-C-T-S, ducts. A duct is a pathway to carry specific substances to specific locations, like sweat, saliva, tears, and breast milk. Those glands without ducts, they release hormones into the bloodstream. So we're going to start breaking this endocrine system down. We're going to begin with the pituitary and the hypothalamus. They work closely with each other. The master, or the pituitary, and the commander, the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus secretes hormones that influence the pituitary. The pituitary gland, well, this is considered to be the master gland of the body because it releases the hormone that turn on or activate the other glands in the endocrine system. The pituitary gland is found in the brain just below the hypothalamus. The pituitary also produces a hormone that's responsible for growth. The primarily responsible for the growth hormone, it regulates growth of muscles, bones, and glands. It also is responsible for prolactin. It regulates maternal behavior in lower animals such as rats. Also produces milk in women. It also releases an antidiuretic hormone, inhibits the production of urine when fluid levels in the body are low. And then the fourth one is the Oxycotin Ossicosan. It stimulates labor in pregnant women, and it's also known as the cuddle hormone. It encourages the caring for infants. Note here, this is not just a hormone that occurs in women, it occurs in men. Men are just as susceptible to the cuddle hormone. Now let's move on to the penal gland. It secretes melatonin. Melatonin is secreted by the penal gland and it helps regulate sleep-wake cycle. The circadian rhythm that we live with is covered by melatonin as far as the sleep-wake time. The thyroid gland, it produces thyroxine, which is secreted by the thyroid and it affects the body's metabolism. Hypothyroidism is too little thyroxine that results in being overweight. Hyperthyroidism is too much thyroxine and is characterized by excitability, insomnia, and weight loss. Cretinism is a condition caused by a deficiency in thyroxine in children which leads to stunted growth and mental retardation. The adrenal glands, these guys release hormones to increase resistance to stress called corticosteroids, promote the muscle development, and release sugar in the liver, making more energy available. Now, epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, produced by the adrenal glands. The testes and ovaries, well, testes produce testosterone and in small amounts, this is also produced by the ovaries. Considered to be the male sex hormone as it aids in the development of the male sex organs. During puberty, the release of testosterone promotes the development of primary and secondary sex characteristics. Primary sex characteristics are those characteristics involved in reproduction, penis size, sperm production ability of the testes. The secondary characteristics are not directly related to reproduction. It would be things like the presence of a beard, a voice getting lower in men. Estrogen and progesterone are produced by the ovaries and in small amounts by the testes. They foster female reproduction capability and secondary sex characteristics. The level of estrogen and progesterone varies and regulates women's menstrual cycle. Now that completes our review of the endocrine system. It's a brief overview. So we're going to look at the evolution and hereditary of the brain development, and there's a fair bit to this. Darwin's theory on evolution, The Descent of Men, published in 1871. The struggle for existence is the core. Natural selection was coined by Darwin. It was survival of the fittest. The species that are better adapted to their environment are more likely to survive and reproduce. Biology serves as a material base for our behaviors, emotions, and cognitions. Mutations, small variations, random genetic variations can lead to differences among the individuals that are affected by the ability to adapt to change. There is an area of psychology known as evolutionary psychology, doing what comes naturally. Well, no, evolutionary psychology is applying adaptation and natural selection to mental processes and behavioral or psychological traits. Behavior patterns that help an organism to survive and reproduce may be transmitted to the next generation. Examples include aggression strategies in mate selection and altruism. Now, instincts, these are stereotype patterns of behavior that is triggered in specific situations. Now, for example, and it's in your textbook, one is known as the not my egg zone. There are geese that if their egg goes within just a centimeter or two of their nest, they will pop them back in there. But if it's beyond that centimeter or two, they just basically go, not my egg. The stickleback fish, they will attack red-bellied males because they're aggressive to others who might be trying to reproduce with the females. And then the songs of the sparrow. Even if that sparrow is raised in isolation, it will still sing its species song. So those would be instincts. Now, many psychologists consider language to be a human instinct, though even this can be modified by experience, and we call that learning. So heredity, genetics, and behavioral genetics. Let's look at those sort of combinations. Heredity, a person's biological structures and processes transmitted from generation to generation. Now, it's a subfield of that study of heredity is called genetics. And so we look at genetics and behavioral genetics. Behavioral genetics, that's the bridge, the science of psychology and biology, and it's concerned with the genetic transmission of traits that give rise to patterns of behaviors. The focus is on individual differences. Heredity appears to be a factor in almost all aspects of human behavior, including sociability, shyness, social dominance, aggressiveness, leadership, thrill-seeking, effectiveness as a parent or a therapist, happiness, even in the interests of arts and crafts. Heredity also influences disorders such as anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, alcoholism, criminal behavior, and personality disorders. Now, to grasp the importance of heredity, we will consider the basic building blocks. And this would be genes and chromosomes, the building blocks of heredity. Now, genes, these basic building blocks of heredity, there's about 20 to 25,000 genes within every cell of a person's body. Chromosomes, these strings of genes, each cell contains 46 chromosomes arranged in 23 pairs. DNA, chromosomes are large complex molecules of deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA. Now, the first was demonstrated by James Watson and Francis Crick, and it takes on the form of a double helix, a twisting molecular ladder. Each rung of the ladder is made up of chemicals whose names are abbreviated. Now, I'll go through them. A, or adenine, T, thymine, C, cytosine, and G, guanine. Now that's A, T, C, and G. So those are the abbreviated names. The Human Genome Project has learned that the sequencing of our DNA consists of about 3 billion DNA sequences. The genetic code, or the DNA sequences that define that defines who we are as a person, our genotype or nature. Now the sperm and egg, 23 chromosomes from the father's sperm and 23 chromosomes from the mother's egg. When the egg is fertilized by the sperm, they form 23 pairs. Sex chromosomes, the 23rd pair of chromosomes, which determines the person's sex, male or female, X or Y. Phenotypes is the manner in which our genetic code manifests itself because of our experience and environmental circumstances. Down syndrome individual has an extra chromosome on the 21st pair, usually contributed by the mother. Now, one of the ways we do some determinations of impact in genetics is to do different studies, and one form of study is known as the Kinship Studies. This is where behavior, where you could sort of ask yourself, is the behavior of our relatives related? That is to say, what we do know from research on kinship is that parents and children share about 50% of their genetic or their genes. They have them in common. And then you go to the next degree of family, aunts and uncles, and there's a sharing of 25% over an overlap. And with nieces and nephews, it drops down to 12.5 with cousins. And so you can sort of see that the genetic familiarity and similarity between family is there, and it remains there even through several generations. Now, kinship studies, these are attempts to compare the presence of a trait and a behavior pattern in people who are biologically related or biologically unrelated to help determine the role of genetics. To take that a step further, twin studies, and this is where they're looking into the genetic mirror. Now there's monozygotic twins. These are identical twins from the same fertilized egg. And dizygotic twins. These are fraternal twins, and they have been born from 2 separate fertilized eggs. Now twin studies, they compare the presence of a trait in monozygotic twins, dizygotic twins, and others to determine the role of genetic factors there. If a monozygotic twin shows greater similarity on a trait than the dizygotic twins, a genetic basis for the trait has been suggested. Now there's the case of the Jims. There are monozygotic twins raised apart, but they both were named Jim, both were married and divorced, both trained to be policemen. Their first sons were both named James Allen. They drove the same car. They were vacationed in the same beach, and they enjoyed carpentry as a hobby. Not all twins are that similar, especially when raised apart. But it does draw some awareness of genetic similarities. Adoption studies, these look for the similarities between children and their natural and adoptive parents. When children reared by adoptive parents are more similar to their natural parents in a particular trait, strong evidence exists of a genetic role. Now that completes this chapter on biology and psychology. We looked at the nervous system and the structures of the brain, then we touched on the endocrine system and finished with a look at the role of evolution and genetics. So next week, we look at chapter 3. Good luck everybody, and keep up the good work. Bye for now.